know, the height and lip allowed and clearance on the sidewalk surface or curb edge. So this is just compiling of that information in which you folks had requested at last meeting.
Did you get a chance to read this ahead of time?
No.
Okay,
But it's not.
okay. Did you want to go over it, Mr. Green?
Yeah.
Is this act, is this?
Yes, if you like, for the mic.
Okay, you can say.
So basically, the inspection of sidewalks happens annually, so we have a requirement to inspect annually, provide a report. The Eng-Tech generally does that, and he'll walk every piece of sidewalk in the city and take notes on it, take measurements. We made little things on there to make it easy to measure depths and whatnot without getting right down and looking at things, so it's easy for him and fast. He produces a list based on severity that you see on the list there. That goes over to Public Works for action. Anything that he finds that is sort of in the dangerous category on inspection, he's supposed to flag, paint, do whatever he can to mark it up. And if he's unable to deal with it at that point, it's a call to Public Works to send something out in the way of a sign or something to reinforce the danger, I guess, at that point. So immediate action is sign it, mark it, until such time as we can get a repair done on it. If a repair's easy to do, you know, half hour, an hour's worth of work to get something remediated, they'll do that on the spot if they have the time. If not, it'll go into the queue for getting looked after sometime in the year before the next one occurs. You may find some of the markings in place, you know, for a number of months, depending on when they get around to getting things fixed. General idea is identify it this year, fix it this year, and then hopefully it's not still there the next year is the program. So it does take a little bit of time. Some of the sidewalk issues will result in a panel replacement. I've got the guys doing small panel replacements in-house now, so we don't have to wait for contractors. Bigger stuff will contract out as funds allow. We've got a grinder now for our skid steer, so we're able to take lips off ourselves. They just got training on that a couple of days ago. So they'll be able to grind things down. And I also had a grinding contractor come in this year, hopefully for the last time, to address a few other areas that were more excessive, I guess, that needed more work. We also take a look at using bonded topping mix to deal with spalling on the surface that gets rough, that might catch heels and other things. And we can also use that same mix for transitioning, you know, something that's of a height that you can do that with, a transition or ramp something down. So yeah, generally that's the program of how they're operating. The standards that we have here, I did check a couple of years ago when I got here, and they are fairly consistent standards around BC for other municipalities, specifically Vancouver, Burnaby area and whatnot. Very, very similar depths of how you rate things.
So anything that's fair is left alone? It's not addressed? And it's the hazardous is the only section that you address?
Yeah, I guess the rating would be if the fair. Yeah, they'll assess, they'll put it all onto the list for Public Works to address. Public Works will address things based on a priority basis. Obviously, the worst things they want to hit first, things that are ultimately visibly dangerous, and time and material allotments, working forward from there. Things that are minor may not get touched at all that year, but the goal is to address them all. It's just a matter of how we prioritize them. Not saying it necessarily happens in all of them. We're probably catching more than what I've seen in any of the previous reports. I think we're actually doing more work rather than just doing drive-bys.
This is a little off the topic. Is it possible for all the indentations where the wheelchairs and strollers go and whatever to paint those a bright color so that they're easily identified versus the rest of the sidewalk?
letdowns you're talking about?
Yeah,
The actual-
indent,
okay,
whatever they're
The
called.
transition areas? Okay.
yeah.
It's possible. Normally, when a question like that comes up, I'd look at the Transportation Association of Canada standards first before we make a decision on that. And then put into a program of how we're gonna get it achieved. We did buy a paint sprayer, so once I get somebody comfortable enough to actually start throwing paint around the city on their own, we'll get that into use. Something that's been done, I call it incorrectly in the past, is they've been marking the edges of some letdowns with yellow paint. Yellow paint is for no parking areas, not for marking letdowns.
Right.
So there's a lot of decisions made over the time where they probably didn't check the national standards, make sure they're marking things appropriately, and then follow from there. But we can, yeah, I can definitely check the standards and see what we can do on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, get some feedback from that.
Okay.
And then, of course, Council Attorney, there would be cost
Yeah.
that council would have to approve as part of the painting program.
Yeah, that's what I would hope that
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Green would. give us.
So just so the committee understands, there's the process, but there's also the
Yes.
cost to the taxpayers. So.
Yeah, no, I would just like information on that, just to see if it is viable, and because, you know, I kind of notice sometimes you don't see the letdowns. I call them indentations. You don't see them. Yeah, so yeah, if all the information give us, be great.
If I may, something I discovered recently as well, there were some conversations in the last year or so about the crosswalks and whatnot being painted colors and whatnot. It came up in a couple of questions, and that's why these standards change all the time, and I was surprised as well, but the question came up. To me, that's a non-standard thing. It's a traffic control device, so you gotta worry about that. You look up the tax standards, well, they've got a new program where they're actually setting standards for doing rainbow crosswalks, which is awesome. So if we check the standards all the time on these things, they are progressive. They are gonna follow the needs and the comments that they get as well. I haven't paid that much attention to TAC in the last 3 years, but I used to be a member. Get all the publications and whatnot, stay close to it and go to the conferences all the time. So back then I was more in tune with it, but it does look like something we need to keep a review on, so.
You?
Yeah. Okay, good, thanks. This is sort of related. It was something that came up when we were on the previous committee. And I'm sorry to say, I don't notice if it's been corrected or not, but that's for the handicap parking that we have downtown. And it's, you know, you've got the blue area down on the pavement, but in the winter, you can't see it. And so we had asked that signage be put up, and I don't know if it's been done or not. Do you know if that's been done?
Yeah, put everything back checked. We also get the back of the curbs painted blue, so they stand up 6 inches taller than the bottom of the road, so we should be able to see them. But yeah, there's generally signs. Any new ones we put in, we're definitely doing signs as well, so.
When there is snow though, you can't see that curb because it's all piled up on there. No, I'm saying the blue on the curbing does get covered by snow and ice.
Your face, you got your curb, and you got your signs. You generally have 3 levels of reinforcement for
Yeah, the
that.
sign is great,
Yep.
but the painting can't be seen. Did you have things, CEO? You look like you are ready to talk here. Snow removal, can we discuss that, Mr. Green? As you know, that's a pet peeve of mine. Is there any way to get a small, machine into where the bus goes so that there is a clear area between, the sidewalk and getting onto the bus so that they're not going over a mound of snow that's being pushed against the curb?
It's already a requirement of the crew that are doing things, not necessarily that you're catching it every time. More often than not, we have to remind them to go back and get that stuff done. Because they do multiple passes, depending on what they're trying to do, it's first clear this and then they go back and clean up more, then they might go back and clean up that pathway over to the actual thing. So they got to remember and have that reinforcement to go back all the time. Usually I get a call from the bus operators fairly quickly if there's a couple of problem areas, and then Mike will get a call and then he'll go lay a hammer on a bunch of things and things will start happening pretty quick. But we do need to reinforce with the operators that a whole job or a complete job's required here, that we don't just clear the road and then go back to the shop. You know, depending on the snow event, it could take, 5-7 days to do the full cleaning and get everything back down to virtually summer conditions where you can see handicap spots and crosswalks and things like that. We just gotta, the culture has not been that. It's go out, deal with the initial, plow the lanes off and then go do something else. And we have to stay on top of that stuff to keep reminding people to do the full job.
Thank you.
Snow removal on the Central Park walkway or the trail in the winter. I know that the snow melts, like especially when it gets to be like February or whatever, and you get snow melting and it's pooling, and there's a couple of sections that are really hazardous in the winter. And I'm sure that Susan will find that too. And I know for myself, it's terrible, right? And you have to, you can't even walk there. You have to kind of go off into the field, which is not good either. Those two areas, I would like to see them built up so that they don't pool in there. Otherwise, people that they can't walk there. They can only go part way and then they have to turn around and go back. No. I thought so too, but it's not, yeah. It is bad. It's along the golf course right there. So it's like you come down off by the clay banks right there. And it's right in there. So there's a couple of really low spots.
So I'm gonna go. Okay. 100% understand the risk there. When we do snow removal and ice management, we always prioritize main arteries and downward. So when we, yeah, I know you know that. So when we talk about the active transportation paths, those are unfortunately still fairly far down the priority level. So we will get to them, the staff will get to them and if we're having specific spots that we're hearing lots from the community, then I know that Mike, the superintendent, flags those. But we have to be really aware that our staff, unlike other places where they have staff that simply do snow removal and manage ice, our public works staff do everything. And it limits how much we can get done in any one of our programs. As we're looking at there are a few parts of the active transportation path that I know that the director and I have talked about that are not how he might have asked them to be engineered. And so there are definitely places where we would like to see improvements. However, financially, the municipal government just doesn't have the money to do those improvements. Again, my favorite saying, no water, no sewer, no town. Active transportation paths, unfortunately, are continuing to be nice to haves, right? Like, I hate to say that because I think it's important, but it does continue to be nice to have. So as the money comes available for us to make those changes, funding becomes available, we're applying on some active transportation funding for another part of the community. And so as that funding becomes available, we'll try and make those changes. But, a lot of that was well before this administration and this council, and we're kind of dealing with some of the things that maybe were shortfalls in how it was done. And quite honestly, it could have been that there wasn't enough money to do a proper subgrade. We can't know. Yeah. Oh, we go for grants almost on a daily basis.
So lucky for everybody, I walk a lot and it's I'm on that path all the time myself. I take my two little dogs and go from my place, do a loop around there, and then they're half dead and I gotta drag them up the hill. It's quite something else, but that path, the lower section along close to the golf course down by Rotary Park, there is a ditch down the side of that that's well overgrown. It's been on our maintenance list since I got here. Also, obviously, funding availability and programming for ditching and stuff like that has to go through budget, so it's not something that's been able to be focused on yet. And we've got, growth of little saplings and stuff that need to come out of the ditch, which are things that can cause it to overflow and get up on the pathway. A little farther up that pathway, when you get near the clay banks, all the runoff off there brings all that snotty clay down. So bigger picture, we also need to get a pathway down from Parker through Parker Park down to there to make a connection, because there's no pathway or sidewalk connections from the bench unless you're all the way over at Grimmett or all the way down to Norgard's. So these are things that are on the list. I think I have money in the budget, should it get approved at some point, to do a concept design for a pathway down. My initial look at that moves the entire pathway over away from the bank. It will elevate the area that's a little bit lower as well. We need to potentially do some retaining walls and storm retention along the backside and make the pathway function more like a road where it sheds water, not attracts water and mud. Right? So that whole backside is, with all the drainage coming down and outfalls that are there, speaks to a much bigger project. Unfortunately, that involves stormwater retention, retaining walls, moving the pathway, building it up more. It's a big, costly project, but it is on the radar. That existing pathway is largely wore out. It doesn't meet current width standards. It's got a lot of surface issues. So we're on that particular area, maintenance aside, once the mud hits it, you can't really do anything with it because the mud just sticks to everything. When ice gets on things, it's a little hard to remove as well, unless we throw salt all over the place. We do have 2 small municipal tractors now that when the plow trucks go, generally at least one of the municipal tractors go if it's on a weekend or off hours. If it's during regular hours, everybody goes. So both those machines will go, and the small municipal tractor that does pathways in that area generally goes out at the same time the trucks do. However, shouldn't happen on that pathway, but often the truck might move material back onto the pathway that will have to be hit next time around, kind of a thing. So there's a lot of ability to do things, and it's not like the primary pathways do get fast attention because we have one person that generally runs that small tractor all the time and they get deployed immediately. They generally run from downtown up to the bench and back down again. So
and if I can just touch on the cost of, like, at this point, we don't know what the cost is. We can have an order of magnitude to do that whole project to make those improvements. And that we do apply for funding on a regular basis. Pretty much anytime something comes available that is in any of our planning. But what happens is with federal and provincial funding, typically, sometimes we get a bit of a better deal, but typically we have to provide 50% of a project. So if it's $1 million project, we already have to have $500,000 in the bank. And we're not in a financial position to be able to do all the things that staff identify as being needs. Rick, yes, walks all the time, and we have a number of large projects that need significant work. And so figuring out where that little bit that we have can augment and provide our 50% for grants is quite the challenge. So, we've got fairly lengthy lists of things that need improvements and not enough money to do all the improvements, for sure. So we will continue. And anytime we see a grant come available that we like, that we know we can use quickly and get something done, we're on it.
No other discussions? Okay, so go on to 4.2, age-friendly and accessibility advisory committee work plan. Well, I just got told I was chairman, so I don't know what we're supposed to be doing with it. Thank you.
Not a problem. So folks, that is just what we went through at the last meeting. It was that very large printout that Hopefully had spoken about keeping those printouts for everybody. If you have not, kindly let me know and I will get you a new hard copy for your records. So what we had done from the last meeting is I went through all of our previous minutes and I noted what had been put as actions. And if we scroll down here, I've got it up here on the screen. I also have it in your agenda packages. So yeah, we've got the whole attached Our Merit Age-Friendly Action Plan. But if we go all the way down, so I think we had discussed at the last meeting, we're going to review this, but we wanted to see where we were at from the last time that the committee had come together on what had been actioned and what had been completed. So by going through the minutes, I was able to get that compiled for everyone. What had been worked on and essentially where everything else. I actually met with Miss Bloom as well, and she was able to give me some guidance on what had been worked on from the last committee meeting before it was dissolved. You just pardon me. I feel like I've been scrolling for a million years here. Sorry, folks. Try to make this larger for everybody here. So you're going to have a printout in your package. So what I did is I noted the meeting date from when the minutes were taken and the sections from the action plan that were highlighted as an area of interest for the committee at that time. So I think this is a really awesome starting point for the committee now to see where the committee was at now. So the recommended action plan, the committee discussed options for updating the 2015 Public Service Directory for seniors, mental health, and disabled persons. We found out from the research that the local newspaper actually already runs this twice a year in the paper. I believe it's called the Golden. Yeah. And so folks, going through this, I think this would be a good point of action to establish what is still important to the committee, or even perhaps just going through the action plan from the top and seeing the areas of interest for the current committee.
We have separate people votes on that, Chair. Kelly? What do I need to do? I press the button? No,
No, you're good.
You're on.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. It was embarrassing. I guess I had a question. So Aslan, thank you for doing this because I think this is such an important first step to seeing where things are at. Recognizing that the plan is from 2016, I think. It's almost 10 years.
Oh, can I interject?
No, it's my turn
No,
on the
it's
microphone.
my turn, Kelly. No, I need to fix it, Kelly.
Interject, please.
So we're just waiting to have some funding update released to find out about some funding that we applied for to review the plan. But I don't believe that the provincial government has yet released that information, that there's funding to update the plan. But they haven't released that, so I can't confirm or deny.
Okay.
Am I still live?
You
Okay.
are.
Wonderful news. I was curious, sort of, if that was and this is my fault for maybe not knowing quite what the process is. Are we looking at redoing the age-friendly plan so that it's a 2024, 2025 plan? Are we hoping to make it an age-friendly / accessibility plan? Is the idea to keep working from this plan but update it with accessibility? Is there a goal? Do people have a vision for what needs to happen next?
Yes, we have to discuss.
Do I have to turn it off before?
No, just
Okay.
turned off.
CAO?
No, go ahead. No, you had yours on first. Oh, hang on. Okay, you're good. Yeah.
I don't have an answer to Kelly, though. Mine is, along the line. So if you want to answer or respond to anything that
Okay. So I know how much funding we might be getting, which would not be enough to redo a whole plan. And, my pet peeve with plans, is that we often do plans and never actually meet the outcomes of the plans, even though the outcomes are still valid. The action items are still valid. So if, based on, I know our resources will be in the next few months, I would suggest that we work with a consultant to review and update the plan rather than develop a new plan. And I think that there was some talk about focusing on more of an accessibility versus just age friendly, right? Was that, we discussed that the other day? Yeah. Yeah, but somehow it always morphs into the age friendly committee instead of the accessibility. Yeah. And so just so you guys, I have a master's of occupational therapy. So I look at this plan and I see all the valid, very important things, from an accessibility perspective, but also a aging in place perspective. And so, just really working to make sure that we have actual actionable items versus, the standard plan, which we all have to have a plan, but we don't want it to be the plan that every other community has. Right? It needs to meet our needs, which I think sometimes doesn't happen when you go straight to a consultant to develop your plan for you.
I agree with that, 'cause I think I've seen so many times where we've had consultants come into town, they've done, their consulting and it's beautiful work, it's great language, and then it gets put on the shelf and nothing's happened. Personally, I feel that if we took 3 or 4 actionable plans and actually did them each year, I think that instead of all the philosophy of everything, I'm more of what needs to be done, let's do it. And then we've done that, let's get on to our next goal and do it instead of all the philosophy. That's my personal opinion. So, Judith.
Thank you. I'm also a bit of I like a goal and a purpose to know what I'm working towards. And thank you for this summary, Ashlyn. There are definitely a few things for me that I've highlighted, primarily due to my role as coordinating the Better at Home program. And so, yeah, there are a few things that, if now is an okay time, I am more than happy to give an update on some of these pieces. And I know some of this was from years past, and so there's definitely been some changes between past Better at Home funding and allowances and what's happening now. With regard to the second point on the first page, I definitely have started to recruit, and I am getting some volunteers, and I'm definitely looking for more volunteers, and am about to roll out another program in November for the social isolation and connection piece, where there will be the friendly telephone calls and visiting, which is also noted further on in this action plan. There has been some community coffee and some meal pieces that have been taking place that in the new year will very likely have a slight increase. And the hope is, once I do have a few more established volunteers, to be able to perhaps offer some of the grocery support. Again, a piece that was mentioned in past that hasn't been active yet, but that is the piece. And I would love to work, if possible, in any way with the city to advertise some things or get information, get feedback, and hear what's going on with the seniors and community. I'm always trying to reach out from that avenue. So I do appreciate this, and thank you.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that the recommended actions that we have for each area. What we have done in the past is we've gone through them and we've decided what was most important, but each one we gave them a rating. Because lots of them are more. And you pick those first, and so there's a little bit in every area. So, and I don't know where we are on those, and that's what we're supposed to do. That we knew where we were. And then maybe look and see if someone will even valid anymore, because they might have been taken care of. in the last
3 years, yeah.
So all these recommended actions that came from the original plan, that's something that we would go through and. really say, okay, that's done, that's done, that's done, that's done. This is important. We do something, or if we move on and check something else, right? So that's, yeah.
I would suggest once we get announced funding and perhaps we're able to get a facilitator in to help facilitate this discussion, which will be the updating of the plan and the action items.
Oh, Kelly, you had your. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. So I love that. Thank you, Judith, for that update. Cynthia, I think we're in a bit of a holding pattern, it sounds like. Sounds like it's a really good idea to go through these. I just want to keep on folks' radar here that the accessibility legislation has some really specific things that need to go into this plan. And sounds like maybe there's an opportunity if funding has been awarded to support a consultant to try and do that work. Because I do think that there are a lot of that work around accessibility is about what the city does for the community, but also internally as well. So there might need to be some tweaking and to your point, reprioritizing in order to make sure that the city of Merritt is hitting their legislative requirements around the plan as well. So I guess just kind of building on your point around priorities, what can be done quickly, but also what's hitting maybe both targets to meet those legislative requirements as well.
Is one of those having an elevator that works in the arena? So
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so Ashlyn, where shall we be going from here? We're going to wait for funding and see what we get and CAO or.
Started itself. I think we should at least start leaving some of the stuff that's been done now. It's not guaranteed that we are getting.
I cannot say that.
Yeah, right. So I'm
I'm not allowed
Ah.
to say that we're getting the
It
funding.
was a very good application.
It was a really good application.
That like people would be silly not to give it. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you
Yeah.
mean, but I'm still saying we're still sitting here
Yeah.
needing to do something
Yeah.
about it.
But a lot of these things also don't involve funding. So, you know, if we go through it and say, yes, maybe this is what we do want to do, and there's no funding involved, then we could begin to carry that out. So, did we? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's okay. You're on.
Okay, I think what I'm hearing is keep going on what we have. Because folks are here, and then maybe hold off on further planning until maybe there's a good chance that there's funding available to support that work. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds great.
Because, you know, I just look at sharing local knowledge. The City Library and Museum could coordinate a speaker series for the fall or winter. Well, right now, through the Senior Center, each month, October, November, December, there is a speaker coming in. Kelly is November's speaker. Adam Hart, our emergency person, he will be in October. So, you know, those are things that are kind of here sharing local knowledge that we're doing, and it doesn't cost any money. So CAO is it possible just to hit each of these and check off which ones that maybe we are doing and talk about them?
So I'm not sure how long the committee would like to sit today. But I'm wondering if
Maybe next time.
maybe it's worthwhile confirming. And maybe Ashton's a bit more work for you, but to take out the ones that look like they've already done and have them separated out from the ones that are still maybe outstanding. And then send that to people well in advance so they can go through and say, oh no, this is already happening somewhere else as Counselor Charney is saying, so that maybe we get down to the ones that nobody's addressing, or we're pretty sure nobody's addressing.
And maybe difference between that needs funding and no funding. Or can just put a checklist on it. This needs funding, this one doesn't need funding. So if it doesn't need funding, maybe we could start doing it right away.
Yeah.
Yep. No. Okay, any other discussions? Okay, new business 5.1, age-friendly and accessibility action tracker. Ashlyn, you're up. This is it. This is what we're into. We're into this one. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the plan is you're going to update it and modify it and make sure everyone has it before our next meeting.
This meeting, I had the packages all ready for everybody. If they want a hard copy the Friday before the meeting, it'll be up front, upstairs with the girls in a folder. There's going to be a copy printout for everybody if you want a hard copy. If you'd like, we could even have it hopefully prepared a little bit earlier than the Friday before the meeting.
I'm just wondering if the tracker,
Mm-hmm.
the way we're talking about modifying the tracker versus like what appears to be done
Yeah.
and what isn't done or has even less, the less information.
Mhm.
If that could be done well in advance of the agenda. And then because the agenda, we might have items come to the agenda very close to the meeting time. So don't want to put the agenda out early.
Mhm.
We want to maybe put the tracker out early.
For sure. And almost like a homework piece. People can review it and maybe submit back their suggestions
Mhm.
beforehand. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
When is the next meeting?
Pardon me?
When is the next meeting?
Oh, we don't have a set date at this time,
Okay.
but this committee has decided to meet quarterly. So. Does it feel a bit long?
Kelly?
Ashlyn, could, just to help Sue here, spreadsheets are so lovely because they're sortable, but they don't do well for sort of a text to speak
Okay.
approach, for Sue. So I'm wondering if, it could be in maybe a table format,
New table.
like a word table.
Sure.
Doesn't like the cells,
No.
the formulas in the cells.
You know, yeah.
Okay, I will convert it to a table.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Ashlyn.
See, that's the first move. There we go.
There we go.
And this is great because ultimately some of our stuff on our website, we need to adjust to make it more accessible to the text to speech readers.
Okay.
Check that off.
Got one then.
Look, that's gonna be the next tracker.
Meeting, we're looking into a different podium for the council chambers. So we're looking into options. Right now, we're kind of narrowed it down to a couple tables, but of course, with that, we need to find funding. But it'll be a sit to stand desk, so it'll be wheelchair accessible. There'll be chairs present for, other users if children come to speak as well. So that was an action from the last meeting and it is underway.
What about markers on the button for speaking? We were gonna put a little marker on it or something.
Something more risen, are you thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for Sue. Yes.
Okay.
tactile. Yeah, here we go.
I could even braille up, I could stick it on, but then the cleaners that come in will do like they did at the post office, and every time I mark my mailbox, they'd come along and knock it off, clean it off. Okay.
Okay, there.
Do some investigating. I'll look into it.
Okay. Gail?
So Judith and I were just talking, and we think that quarterly is not really workable right now. I think we need to meet monthly until we get this all straightened out.
No problem.
Yeah.
Me.
Is that okay with everyone?
I have no problem with that.
I think you're required to meet minimum quarterly, so there's no maximum. Although. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys, if there was a thorough update on the hedge program this summer. We did many hedges to reduce the amount of blocking on the sidewalks. So you'll see that's been done around the community in addition to the sidewalk work. We're also working on our good neighbor bylaw. So we've identified there are places where people don't take responsibility for the weeds that are growing along the side of the sidewalk, onto the sidewalk. So some of that, Rick identified as an issue and will be including in our good neighbor bylaw as well. As well as probably the hedges and the overhanging trees. So we should see some improvement around sidewalk accessibility in general. In so much as you can have in a community where sidewalks hit gravel. Which we can't change because the cost would be tremendous and the gravel is part of our stormwater system. So I think that bylaw did a lot of work on the hedges this year and had a lot of negative feedback from hedge owners. But too bad, so sad.
Judith?
I do. I have noticed some improvement with that. I was just curious, the bridge right by A&W and there's like a willow or something that's really, is that a personal property or a city property? Does anybody know? Cause it's really.
Well, either way, we would be, if the property owner doesn't remediate it, then we would do it and we would do it because it's encroaching on city land. And so we could potentially bill it back, but it is costly. And that's the problem, right? Is that there's a cost to it that has never really been built into the budget to do this type of work if we have to get a contractor out to do it. So, but it is something that we're becoming more aware of, obviously.
Ashley, do you have?
Yes, so if we are going to meet monthly, I do believe we have to vote on it. If that's something that we're going to change, because the last agreement we had was to meet quarterly. So if we need a motion, I believe in a first and a second. Maybe not a motion.
Are you sure it's not just that they have to meet, the legislative requirement is that they meet minimally every quarter?
I have to cross check, but I believe we're supposed to vote on it if we're gonna change the meeting time, but I could be incorrect.
Well,
Doesn't hurt.
I can make a motion that change the meeting time from quarterly to once a month.
You can just make a motion.
Yeah.
Once a month, the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so meet once a month for the next 3 months and review at that time, the end of 3 months.
Fantastic.
I need a first. I did. Oh. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, all in favor? Against? Passed. Carry. Okay, any other topics to be brought up? Okay, I call this meeting, adjourn this meeting. I think, Ash, do you know the date yet?
So this is the first Thursday of the month. At 2:00, that work for everybody? Okay.
No?
No, I'm on babysitting and summer. Oh, so November or just in general? What's that, like for November? Just for November. Or like I was like, we want to try and set the same meeting, it's easier for us if it's the same day. Yes. And exactly. And we could certainly continue with. We can do that. Okay, so the first, for the next 3 months, the first Thursday at 2:00. In November, I'm gonna come, but that's okay. I can, if there's a homework ahead of.